Today I want to talk about how the program works. How the spell, the indoctrination, the program that has been installed over generations and perpetuated through the American system of patriarchy, capitalism, Christianity, how the spell is cast, how it all relates to frequency and vibration, and what we know about neuroscience at the same time. Because this is all, my journey to this knowledge started with the lower knowledge of science. I did not decide one day that I was going to believe in everything spiritual and just jump straight there. Like, I went through all of the scientific ways that I could deny reality as much as possible. But as I've woken up to the way that this world actually works, and now I can see that so many of us are waking up, and it's very important. My job is to not wake anybody else up. I can't wake anybody else up. Everybody's living their own dream. It's not my responsibility to wake anybody up. But if you are starting to question, you're starting to wonder, or you're saying, hey, something isn't right here, I would like to share my lived experience, my knowledge, my experience, what I've seen, what I know, and how I understand the program to work. Fundamentally, you are a bioelectrical physical being, okay? One of my minors in undergrad was cognitive science, which was in the philosophy department, as opposed to neuroscience, which was in the biology department, right? So cognitive science is looking at neuroscience and the brain, but through the lens of philosophy. And one of the first things my cognitive science professor said on the first day of class was that the human brain is a computer. It's not an analogy. It is a computer. The biological hardware is the brain, and it is programmed with thoughts, beliefs, ideas. And that was incomplete. I now understand that emotions play a huge role in programming, because emotions are energies in motion. That's how you get the program to stick. But for the most part, my understanding of the way the brain works comes from that combination of neuroscience and philosophy and all of that and all of the studies and everything, right? So we know that the brain can be programmed, right? And the CIA has done a lot of different projects over the years, Project Stargate, MK Ultra, the Mockingbird, all of the studies. And before anybody says that, that's not true or whatever, it's literally, a lot of it has been declassified on the CIA's website. They just know that you don't like to read. I'm not speaking to you personally, but the general person doesn't like to read. That's how 50% or more of Americans read at a 6th grade reading level or lower, and a third are functionally illiterate. That's part of the programming. That's part of the design. That's why the American education system was set up by the Rockefellers to have a system of, workers and not a system of thinkers. They didn't want you to think. They didn't want their working class to be aware or know the ancient knowledge or understand that they are a spark of the divine and the creative being that can create reality, because that is dangerous to their status quo. So fundamentally, Christianity has been rewritten over time, and lots of people have talked about this, although it was considered fringe, or particular creators are mysteriously leaving the earth because they are unveiling this knowledge to more people and getting more followers and views, so they just silence it, right? But here's the thing, this knowledge isn't new. It's ancient. Our ancestors know that. Human beings, Homo sapiens in their modern form, have existed for 350,000 years. Okay, agriculture was invented about 10,000 years ago. You control the food, you control the population, cities, and you have the law, then you have the education, the religion. It's all kind of built into each other. But before that point, we were mostly hunters and gatherers, but there were civilizations, okay? They have found a structure that is 350,000 years old, which totally rewrote a lot of anthropology beliefs. But the idea that modern Homo sapiens, our brains are the same as they've been for 350,000 years with some little updates, but for the most part, we're the same species. We are the same species. To think that we have been sitting in caves doing nothing for 350,000 years, and then 10,000 years ago, we were like, woo, we figured everything out. It doesn't make rational sense. That doesn't make sense. That's always, hey, look, a ladybug. Anyway, that's never made sense to me. If you read books like The Dawn of Everything, Debt in the First 5,000 Years, Bullshit Jobs, things by David Graeber, who I believe was also, we're not going to talk about that. You know too much, you get silenced. But the thing is, you can't keep a reflection of God, which we all are. We are all the universe experiencing itself subjectively through this blip of a moment in the infinite expanse of space and time, which goes on in any direction. But for some reason, when the Egyptian civilization fell to all of the conquerors and, colonizers who came and took their ideas and their knowledge, a lot of that ancient knowledge was stolen from the general population and kept in religious circles. And so they kept rewriting the Bible and eliminating things that didn't serve what its purpose was, which was to keep society controlled. And so here's the thing, like all other religions, there are aspects of truth. That's how people can see these verses, particularly the ones that Jesus spoke, and be like, oh, that's true, that's truth. I know that. My soul recognized that's truth, because when you recognize truth, universal truth, I experience clairsentience, so I experience full body chills. It does not matter who says it, where it comes from. My body knows, right? My soul knows. And so many people who don't have critical thinking skills by design don't understand that just because one of the lines is true does not mean that all of the rules and the laws and the shame programming, none of that is true. That is meant to keep a specific person in power, which is the way the patriarchy works. It keeps white men who follow a very specific patriarchy, anti-matriarchal, anti-divine feminine belief system. And here's the thing, I don't think that we need to go so far the other way and kick men out. That isn't balanced either, right? The true balance, the yin and the yang, comes from the masculine and the feminine being in balance. And so what we're seeing, basically everything, comes down to the fundamental misalignment that has been happening, where we've had nothing but patriarchy and we're destroying the earth, which is literally the source of creation, where we have come from. And so it goes back to, the Bible being changed over time, and there are other books of the Bible. I've read about the book of Enoch and other things that have said, that there are all kinds of things in history that have been lost. History is written by the victors, okay? You're not going to hear the history from the indigenous people who weren't able to write the history books if you're in the Western education system. It was written by a very specific type of person, for a very specific cause and reason. And I talked about this in a different video, but think about saying the Pledge of Allegiance, right? So they try to convince us that magic isn't real, spells aren't real, ritual doesn't work, astrology is fake. Ha ha ha, anybody spiritual is out of their mind. We'll, put them in institutions and forget about them because they're crazy, right? It didn't work. It's not going to work. But they know that ritual works, that spell works, that the brain is programmable, and that we are, indoctrinated through our belief systems and rituals and spells, through the stories and words. Because think about the pledge. What were you doing? You put your hand on your heart chakra, and you pledge your allegiance before you knew what the hell that word meant. We were 5 years old. We had no fucking idea what we were saying. Nothing. We had no idea what we were saying. But we were pledging our allegiance to a flag, to a piece of fabric, and what it represents, right? And what it represents. What does it represent? Now, when we talk about America, I love America. I love the people here. I love this country. It is so beautiful. I've had the good fortune of driving across the country once, and I manifest doing that again very soon. If you've never done it, if you think that you hate America, I encourage you to go experience real America, real people, real places. Not the government, turn the news off, blah, blah, blah. Go actually see America. It's beautiful. This place is worth protecting. But we didn't pledge our allegiance to the land or to the people. We pledged our allegiance to a flag, to a government system, to a belief system, to a system of patriarchy and colonization that has literally damaged the entire world. It spreads like a virus. It is a disease. It is a disease. I have so much, and this is the place where, I think it's called the curse of knowledge. I have so many data points in my mind that I can point out all of the African leaders who have been assassinated over time, and then the colonizer puts a new dictator in. All of the coincidences with presidents who have tried to go other ways, and then the president who fills in, goes back to the war machine, right? There is nothing coincidental or accidental about any of this. It's all completely by design. It's where the word conspiracy came from. Conspiracy theory wasn't in the vernacular until after JFK was assassinated. It was meant to make those who questioned the official story sound crazy. And so many mystics, psychics, healers, neurodivergent people, artists, we have been saying this stuff for a long time. And what we were faced with was absolute ridicule, fringe, you're crazy. And now more and more people are waking up to it, but they don't have the full picture. They can't see how the system is perpetuated and how we actually get out of it, because we don't get out of it by fighting it. If you fight it, you will lose. The way out is not through the 3D. Because this is just, the three-dimensional reality is just a reflection of our thoughts, our beliefs, our frequency in the collective, right? And people have been learning this. There's been a ton of stuff about manifestation coming out in the neuroscience saying, oh, your RAS is programmable. Oh, you can actually heal your nervous system. Oh, the way that you believe about things, the placebo effect, the observer effect, all of these things, they all are real and they all exist. And people are using it to make themselves wealthy and to teach others and to change things in their life. But we as the collective have to work together to create a better society, because if you are just looking at the 3D, going, look at what these elite people are doing and getting mad at it and frustrated and sending it all your energy, it's the same as saying, I love this and I want this to continue. And that is going to trigger a lot of people. You're like, no, I hate it. Pendulums don't care, okay? All of politics is a pendulum. Regardless of what side you're on, by having a side, you are creating the other side. And people say, oh, if you're apolitical, you're just saying, I go with the status quo. Oh, no. I accept it because fighting what is literally the definition of insanity. I do not agree with it, but I do not give it my energy. Because if you choose a side, you are giving it your energy. You are paying it your attention. You are letting it steal your ability to bring about change, because change happens through us as individuals and the collective. So back to the program, okay? We were taught over generations, and this is true. When I say we, I mean literally everyone in this system, men, women, does not matter what color your skin is, what your religion, what country you come from. We're all programmed in the system that there was a desirable state of being. A neurotypical, highly functioning, cisgender, Christian, obedient, white man. That was the ideal. And that's what so much of Western science is based on. When I tell people I got to my PhD and realized everything was bullshit, that was it. I was like, who? It really came to a head when I was diagnosed with autism my first year of my PhD, and then I was teaching an abnormal psychology class, and the textbook had been published the year before. And in it was things like, autistic people don't have empathy. Mostly males are diagnosed with autism. ABA is a good source of it. I literally looked at this and I was like, who's writing this? Oh, a white man. And then I looked at so much of the science, so much of what we believe in psychology, so much of what is held true, so much of the DSM. Oh my God. And I was like, no. And then I started studying mythology and started listening to indigenous people and people of color, and TikTok allowed me to have these conversations because I grew up in an extremely white area. I had no choice over where I lived. We were still very, very, a lot of poverty, a lot of intergenerational trauma, a lot of abuse. And that's why I can say that this system, it does not matter who you are. You have been traumatized by this system. And there are some people, and the difference between what makes something traumatizing for one person and an event that they grow through another is community. Did you have support? So there were reports of children who witnessed 9/11, right? And there were two different groups. So the ones that got parental support, the ones who went to therapy, the ones who drew pictures about it and talked about it, they don't recall the event as traumatizing. It did not traumatize them. Yes, it was a stressor, but they had the support to not have it become a trauma. Other children who didn't have to necessarily get that support, there are adults who find that deeply traumatizing and have never processed it. If you do not have a good enough parent, and so this is a lot of things too, a lot of people don't realize how traumatized they are because they won't accept how bad their childhood actually was. They think because their parents weren't physically abusive that it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. You need more than clothes and food and shelter to be loved. That is not love. That is the bare minimum. But that's what our parents were taught through their programming, their intergenerational trauma, right? If you did not have a parent, or if you had a parent who was an alcoholic, who was overly religious, militaristic, absent, busy all the time, emotionally unavailable, mentally ill. Any of these things, any and all of these things are traumatizing. If you came back from school one day and you said, I didn't make the cheerleading squad, and that was really important to you, right? And your mom said, that sucks, and then left to go out drinking, or left to go shopping, or just left you alone in that feeling. That was the same as being abandoned in that moment. And that is likely deeply traumatizing you and still affecting you to this day. If you had a mom who sat down and said, oh my God, come here, baby. I know how important this was to you. I love you so much. You'll have other opportunities. I didn't have this, and it hurts to envision that. But that is the type of support that we need to have a strong foundation, to have connection, to have these events not turn into traumas. But so many of us didn't have that, and it's intentional by design. When we had industrialization, they wanted more people in the factories. They don't want, this idea that you need to be working full time and being a mother and being a good mother and being a good worker, and don't you let either of those lives influence the other. What? That's insane. That's not reality, and yet it's what we're told is expected of us. And so many... These flies. Bless all the flies. Bless all the flies away. Please, flies, I love you, go away. Even worse would be if your mother shamed you and said, oh, you should have practiced harder. What's wrong with you? That's because you're not skinny enough. My God, then you not only got abandoned, you also got shame on top of that. That is still impacting you if you have not dealt with it. Right? And that's how most people live their lives. Most people do not realize that their personalities are actually 20 trauma responses in a trench coat. Nobody knows what trauma looks like because the system that traumatizes us is inherent in the system. It's supposed to traumatize you. Because people are easy to manipulate when they feel ashamed, because shame is the lowest vibrational state. If you feel shame, you will do anything and everything in your power to get out of that state, because evolutionarily, shame was a result of being in the out group. So if you did something to hurt your tribe, they would make you feel shame, and you could be kicked out of the community. That's certain death. Evolutionarily, shame kept us safe. It has been turned into a weapon. And so I'm going to tell you something that I believe to be true, and something that I'm starting to see more people realize, but a lot of people still aren't talking about it because they feel a lot of shame. They feel embarrassed. They feel like it's their fault. A lot of people are SA'd as children. A lot. It's by design in this system. And if you think about the certain files, all of the government, so people say, oh, it's the party of whatever. No, it's not one party or the other. It is inherent in the system of patriarchy. And there's so many reasons for this. It keeps people ashamed. It keeps people scared. It separates them from the divine feminine. It makes their bodies the only thing of value. It's ritualistic. Okay, blood rituals are real and they're very powerful. If you are fortunate enough to have a body that produces the blood of life for you every month, use it for good. Because the elite, the billionaires, everybody, whoever knows and has the sacred knowledge, use wars as blood rituals. They use children in these rituals. This is not... And the thing is that, even saying this, or people are like, oh, no way, no way. Literally, just read the news. We've got all these cameras everywhere, and everybody asks, where are the children? You're for the chemical, you're doing it to chase criminals, to get the criminals. What happens to all the missing children? They're the ones taking the children. And more people are talking about their stories about how they were sold and who they were sold to, who showed up in those brothels knowing full well that they were children. This is not a one-off thing. This is not something that happens to a few of us, okay? CSA is an inherent part of the programming of this system. And even now in this moment, there is shame visiting. I feel it in my solar plexus, but I'm going to tell you that this is by design. They don't want us talking about it. They don't want us healing from it. They don't want us, because what happens of us on an individual is being reflected into the collective and vice versa. And we see this in the collective when we blame these specific people on lists. I hate to tell you the statistics about this. And in the Body Keeps Score, which I obviously don't have my books on me right now, I can't read you the exact statistic, but I believe it says something like 1 in 4 girls are CSA'd. But here's the thing that was written a long time ago, and that's just what was reported. It happens in men a lot too. And a lot of people like to demonize people who do this to children. And I'm not saying that what they do is okay. I'm saying that they have learned that from somewhere. Why 95% of men have admitted to essaying a woman. It's learned. It's inherent in the system. It is inherent in a system that devalues the divine feminine, that sees no respect for nature, that does not care about women, that sees a body as the only thing worth of value, and there's nothing in there. I mean, there's so much that goes into this that it's hard to just make a video. You know, I also don't have any of my resources. I'm just going on my brain here now. But like, I think it's important to talk about it, and I'm seeing more people talk about their stories. I'm seeing more people, you know, being honest about what happened to them and the truth, and it's not their fault. It's not your fault. Like, you are not responsible for whatever happened to you as a child or however old you were, because I think the vast majority of us, even if it didn't happen as a child, we experienced some sort of sexual trauma. And it is inherent in this system. It is part of the program of shame and control and fear and the blood rituals that they do to keep themselves in power. And it's why none of the missing children have been found and why they never will. There's no amount of cameras that will ever find those children because they have been stolen for a very specific use. And, you know, there's also... So when I talk about this program, the program that the patriarchy has installed through Christianity, and that has been permeated through the world through colonization and through the war machine. It is foundationally control, hate, division, and it's meant to make you feel like you can't do anything. It's meant to make you look at the outside world and go, you know, society as you've known it is fucked. It's done. It's done. The American empire has collapsed. And the billionaires know this. That's why they've been meeting and gathering and telling you on the media what, you know, they're telling you what their plan is, because they want you to hold that in your mind. They want you to be afraid of it, because fear is a very powerful manifestation device. When your heart and brain are coherent, when you feel and think the same thing, that's how manifestation works. And you can manifest from fear. And you can manifest from shame, and you can manifest the same situation over and over again, and it's not meant to punish you. It's that your heart and your brain believe and feel the same thing. You are in the same frequency. And if you can get out of that, and if you can change your vibrational state, and then you can, you know, get out of the 3D, the matrix that they are in. But at the same time, right, you cannot wake anybody else up. It is not your responsibility. I am watching so many people around me drowning. And don't get me wrong, like, it impacts me sometimes. I am not this perfect vessel of love and light. You're not supposed to be. All of your emotions are valid. And I think a big part of it is decolonizing, is getting the patriarchy out of your mind, is understanding that when you have those thoughts and those beliefs, you need to identify them. You need to ask them where they came from. You need to be very aware of what you're allowing into your consciousness, what you're allowing into your thoughts, what you are giving your attention to, because you are paying attention. Your attention is a form of currency. And I think a lot of people are using this knowledge to make themselves wealthy, and everybody deserves wealth and comfort and success and abundance. It's literally our birthright. But I don't believe that billions of people need to die so that a few people who have unlocked the truth of our divine nature can survive. And I don't know all the answers. I know that we need a collective vision for society. I know that we need to be working on something, and I think the creator economy is one of them. And I've heard indigenous people talk about this years ago. And of course they're right. They've always been. I just encourage you to, if anything I've said, you know, triggers a part of you, or you feel resistance, instead of getting angry at the messenger, evaluate that, look at it in yourself. I've come to learn that every opposition we feel, every time we feel angry and outraged, is just an opportunity to evaluate our wounds, because nothing anybody says is ever about you. It's always about them. But if it impacts you, it becomes about you, but not because of them, because of a wound you already have. And a lot of these times, if you call your parts back to you, if you do intergenerational work and talk to your ancestors, you will potentially call more of that programming back into you. I'm experiencing this, right? I got so far. I was doing so well with all the manifestation. I was literally living my dream life. Everything collapsed because of generational trauma and a shadow reappearing in an external form. All something I will get into. But I realized that the universe was like, okay, two different realities. What are you going to choose? And the older part of me wants to go back to comfort. It wants to go back to safety. It wants to go back to social media and video games and weed. And I don't actually want that. That's not what my soul wants. But now that everything fell apart, I'm like, okay, what do I actually want? And I realized that, yes, I could make myself very wealthy by doing all of the things the manifestation influencers tell you to do. This shit works. It works. The elite know it works. Anybody who's done it know it works. It does work. But why are we not using it to create a better society? Why are we not using the powers of manifestation and the collective consciousness to heal? And I think more and more of us are, and we want to do that. But now I'm kind of like in this place where, what is the next step for me? Sharing my knowledge, sharing what I've learned. It seems both important and unimportant. I have this thing happen when I start to scroll, I'll watch YouTube or whatever, and I'm like, oh, this person said everything that I was going to say. See, it's been done. And I understand that that's a fallacy. That's part of the programming, right? That shame, that sit down, shut up, be pretty, be seen, not heard. Your value comes from the way that you look. The value comes from what you produce. No, your value is inherent. Every living being has value inherent from the fact that you exist on this planet. We live in a world of infinite abundance. If we did not push everything to the extreme for profit, capitalism is one of the heads of the Hydra, but the Hydra is the patriarchy. And we do live in a world where if things were managed properly through what's best for the earth, that everybody could have more than enough, that we do live in this world of infinite abundance. And we all deserve to be safe. There is nobody who deserves to suffer. And I will live on that hill. I don't think anybody, I think the people in charge are some of the most deeply wounded, the most deeply traumatized, the most deeply hurt and separated from the divine feminine. They're in a lot of pain. And they're projecting that pain onto all of us. But you can't lose your empathy. You don't have to agree with somebody to accept their right to exist. And we all have a right to exist that's inherent. And this program is meant to divide you. This program is meant to have you put your power outside. And I've got a lot of predictions about what's going to come up in the next few years. And I'm deciding if I want to share those. I think I do, not in a way to scare people, but in a way to show you that what you think is really important, and to not allow the outside to have your power, because there is a shift in humanity happening. And we know this. I say it like it's just a matter of fact, and I have to remind myself that not everybody sees the videos that I do. Not everybody has seen and read. There is no doubt that this is this timeline frequency, and heaven and hell are frequencies. They're mindsets. They're a choice. But if you don't realize you're a choice, if you don't realize they're a choice, if you're asleep at the wheel and you're letting the media tell you what to think, what to believe, you're going to be driven into hell by no choice of your own. But the only way to get through hell is to walk through it, to walk through the flames, to truly feel it. And that doesn't mean doing this on your own. I think no matter who you are, you need support. And there needs to be a lot more community support. There needs to be a lot more of us supporting one another in whatever way that we can. I know that in no way am I the be all end all. The more I learn, the more I realize I know nothing. And that's really what it comes down to. And I think, there's a very strong imposter syndrome, even making videos like this or thinking about being a mentor or helping people. I'm like, oh, what right do I have? That's the patriarchy. It's understanding that a lot of the programs in our head that tell us that we're not good enough, that we don't have value, that we need to wait until things are better or whatever, it's it's the program. It's the colonizer in our minds. And even if you have benefited from this system by some aspect of your avatar's appearance or belief system, you are being harmed by this system. Everyone is harmed by this system. This system is not conducive to life on this planet. It's not. And I think so many of us are being called to speak up now, to start these channels, to tell the truth, to find our communities, because if we do not, we will not have an inhabitable planet in our lifetimes. This is not in the future. This is now. And we have the ability as a collective to be aware and to talk about what's happening, but we have to face our shadow. And our shadow is big and terrifying and disgusting, and I shouldn't label it judgments. But a lot of what's happening is, a lot of people would agree, is disgusting. And they don't want to talk about it. They want to blame one party or the other. They want to blame one type of person. No, it's all of us. We are all complicit in this system until we decolonize our minds and realize that we are perpetuating the same traumas out into others every single time we judge somebody for their choices, or every single time we choose to be aggressive out towards someone else instead of looking at ourselves and our own flaws and see the ways that we can heal ourselves and see the way that we can heal our trauma and what we've been through. Because the fact of the matter is, if you survived in this system, if your ancestors lived here, if you are a woman or a person of color or neurodivergent or disabled or spiritual and a mystic and a healer, not only were you traumatized, your ancestors were likely severely traumatized, and you inherited that through your DNA, through epigenetics, through intergenerational trauma, which science has finally caught up and been like, yeah, this is all true. Science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin, and without one, the other is incomplete. Just like black and white, yin and yang, day and night, summer and winter, everything occurs in a cycle. The planets have been telling us that since the Earth was formed and since humans could track them. Astrology is the oldest science that was stolen from us and meant to, given to the elite, and the rest of us, we were told, isn't real. But it is. And the astrology can tell us, where we are. And the astrology tells us where we are in, the planetary cycles and everything. And this is an awakening. This is a system collapse. This is the time for something new. Every new beginning is disguised as a painful ending. And birth hurts more than death. It really does. But I believe in every single living being. Anybody seeing this video, if you're seeing my video, you have the ability to change and to grow and to heal and to find your voice and to be authentic and to know that anybody can criticize you and you can go through hell and you're like, I'm strong enough, I'm resilient enough to do this. You need a community, though. We need other people. So trauma occurs because you don't have a community, and these traumas will continue until we find our communities, and we need to do that. And again, I don't know all the answers. There are some things that I know very, very well, and some things I know nothing about. Typically, if I know nothing about it, I don't talk about it, or I learn more about it, or ask questions. But I do know for a fact that we need each other to survive. And this is coming from the most introverted person that you have probably ever met. I need a lot of alone time. But that doesn't mean that I don't need support and I don't need a community, because I do. We all do. But a lot of us neurodivergent people, artistic people, you need a lot of alone time. You need a lot of time with spirit, because alone time is time with your soul, and a time with your soul is time with God. But perhaps this video got a little bit off topic. I think it's all connected. Everything is connected. So anything I could talk about here all comes back into the same. Anything I've talked about all feeds into the same sort of understanding of the world. Anything I've talked about here feeds into the same, because everything is connected. Everything in nature is connected. Everything that we're seeing in the outside, the inside, it's all pieces of a puzzle that fit together to form one large image. And there is nothing that you can separate and you can divide and that you can take out that isn't connected to some other part in some way. Understanding the ways that the system has traumatized you, has put propaganda into in your mind, that propaganda does work, that programming does work, that your brain is in a state of theta from the time you were 0 to 7 years old. Theta is where you go when you get hypnotized. It's first thing when you wake up, last thing when you go to bed, and right after you meditate. From 0 to 7, 24/7, you are in that mindset. They know that. They knew that they were highly programmed. Train up a child in the way it should go so that they will never turn away. They know that. They use violence and abuse and shame and sexual trauma and all of that to control and manipulate the population, and the spell is breaking. The spell is breaking, and it's time to start really thinking and envisioning what we want to come next, and not just going with whatever the media tells us. I think it's also important to look to history for what didn't work. Fighting, wars, violence, they don't work. They've got AI autonomous robots and shit. You gonna fight that? Not in the 3D, you're not. You're gonna fight it here, and here, and here, and in the collective, and here. So I'm gonna give you one thing you can do today that's gonna help. It's gonna help you, and it's gonna help nature, and it's gonna help the collective, even if it seems really silly. I want you to go out, maybe not today, this weekend, whatever. Go out somewhere in public. You can go to a park. You can go walk around downtown, wherever you live. I want you to go outside. I want you to pick up trash. Take a bag with you, wear gloves. If there's like, if it's like a college town, like where I live, and it's just overwhelming and it makes you feel sick, pick a 15-minute block, pick a street and walk up and just pick up trash. If there's so much different trash, maybe you just pick up lids or cans or something. Like, Alex, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Taking care of Mother Earth and your ancestors helps you, it helps the planet, it helps other people. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. We only accept this in the earth because we accept it in ourselves. So go pick up some trash. Maybe somebody else sees you and you inspire them. Don't worry about what anybody else is thinking. Don't worry about not being able to do enough. Don't worry about not doing it long enough. Just do it for a little bit. And thank the planet for taking care of you. And thank your ancestors for being willing to sacrifice their lives so that you could be here in this chance to use your voice. Go ahead and start reconnecting to the earth and to your ancestors and to yourself. And that's the way that we build community, is we heal ourselves first. I mean, we'll never be completely healed. And if anybody thinks or tells you that they're completely healed, run like hell. They're not. We're not. It's not possible. It's not the point. Go show your mother that you love her. The mother of us all. The divine feminine. Gaia. Just pick up some trash. It'll make you feel better. You get outside a little bit, get a little bit of exercise, and you'll have done something good. Well, if you want to hear about any of my predictions, or, as I get better at making these videos, as I have a space to create and to go back to doing research, because I remind myself that I was in academia for over a decade. I'm really fucking good at finding information, about synthesizing it. I can read really, really fast. My brain is crazy in some way. Hyperlexia is an incredible gift. I will be able to create videos that are potentially more engaging and interesting and more whatever, but I'm not there yet, and I'm not going to wait until I'm there to start. But if you want to follow this journey that I'm on, whether I get to travel across the United States, or I get a studio and I can make professional videos, or I just give my predictions, I don't know. I don't have to know. That's the unknown. That's what freedom is. I have the choice to keep making these videos. You have the choice to keep watching them. But if you would like to follow and give me a comment and tell me what you want to hear about, what you want to know more about, what you want to talk about, I would love to hear it. Because I love you guys. I want every single living being on this earth. I know that every single living being on this earth deserves a life worth living. And you cannot fight your enemy, unless you know your enemy. And your enemy is the patriarchy. Okay? Like, there's a bunch of heads off that Hydra. There's a bunch of other things. We're going to talk about all of those other things. But the fundamental thing is division from the divine feminine, the patriarchal mind that says that the feminine has no value. It is poisoning the world. It is poisoning us. It's poisoning society. And it's time for a change. That's all there is to it. And I don't know what comes next, but let's figure it out together. Okay. I love you so much. I'll see you next time.